Hello, everyone. We are here for a recreational search and recovery class. And this is a long class, I'm going to let you know. So, probably what we're going to do is break it into two. And so, we'll see how we're doing on time. And most likely, we're going to need to break it into two sections. And the second section will have the test. Okay. So, no test tonight. No matter what, no test tonight because we just don't have that kind of time. Okay. So hopefully that eases some stress for any test takers. I do have closed captioning on in case we have. I know we have at least one person who is deaf, who is interested in search and recovery. So I'm going to leave it on if that's all right with everyone. All right. So let me go ahead and move forward. I'm going to let you know I am Gabrielle for anyone who doesn't know. I am course director and Southeast Regional Manager for Scuba Educators International. And I am so happy to be here. Most of you are on my leadership team and I have such a fantastic team. I'm so excited about the things that are happening with the nonprofit. This morning I spoke at Rotary Sunrise Notary this morning, and it was very well received. And I told them all about the dream to build a warm water aqua therapy center. I told them all about our team and the great things that we're doing with veterans, with people with disabilities, with kids, all the volunteer opportunities that we have coming up, including Rotary Youth Camp. And the fact that our team is growing in certifications is great. So several of you are in the process of earning certifications, and my hope and goal is to get you to where you want to be. We have so many opportunities coming up to go diving, okay? And so, and to get teaching experience and to get to that level. For those of you who are already where you want to be, awesome. You're going to really be able to help. We have opportunities, including at Rotary Youth Camp, where we used to just do 2 weeks because I was the only HSA instructor. And now we have a whole bunch of instructors who are HSA Dive Buddy certified. So I don't need to be there every single time. And so my thought is that we can cover all the weeks. Uh, just a quick update on the swimming pool that's being built. It's being filled with water tomorrow. How exciting is that? So it has to sit for 30 days after that. But we will have a pool to train in at my house for now. And this includes with the search and recovery drills and skills. So, um, all right. Any other orders of business before I get started? Let me just say that Chris is going to be heading up our search and recovery team with Life Worth Leading, and that we are really excited to be partnering with North Florida Search Team and doing great things. You've probably heard the news lately. It's almost every day somebody is lost, somebody is missing, and there are often dive teams involved in finding those individuals. Um, so we'll get into some of the stories later, but really we have to start somewhere. And so many of you don't have experience in search and recovery. So this is recreational search and recovery. We're going to start with recovering objects and then we're going to we're going to progress past that point. So just to go over the course topics, a little bit of a course orientation. Purpose and expectations. I just shared with you this is recreational search and recovery. We will, it's the first step toward public safety diver. We'll go further than that. We already have some public safety divers on our team too. But it's to increase skills and knowledge underwater. No matter how much experience you have, it's always good to get more experience and more skills. So let's go ahead and do some introductions. And just say your name, where you're from, diving experience, and interest in serving on the search and recovery team. What I specifically want you to say is, I want to be in the water, or I want to be helping with logistics, those kind of things. So for some of us, we may not get in the water. And and after tonight's lecture, you might change your mind about where you thought you wanted to be, and that's okay too. So why don't we start? I'll just call out who I see first, and the first person I see below me is Andrea.
Hey, Andrea Jones. I advance open water diver, nitrox, and cavern. And my interest is probably more logistical or support, but I'm kind of halfway. I'm interested in both, but if I have to pick one, I'm going to say support.
Awesome. And you're also a dive master in training. So
Yes.
very good. Bill.
Hi, Bill Turner, dive master, just recently, and I'm actually from Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Presently living in Crawfordville, Florida. I've been diving since '84 as open water, and I guess about 2 years ago I started with Gabrielle and went from open water to dive master. And I'll be okay either serving on top of the water or in the water for the recovery team.
Thanks, Bill. And there were several steps in between that open water and dive master, and you worked hard to earn all of them. So thank you. All right, Anna Marie.
Hey everyone, I'm Anna Marie Friars, recently certified instructor, and I did my open water elsewhere, but I've done everything past that with Gabrielle and a few things over with Ed and Mariana. Um, and I am from New Jersey originally, about 10 minutes away from Lincoln Fields, so I'm big Go Birds right now, thrilled. And I am interested in serving in the water on the search team, but I will go wherever I am needed. So I'd be happy to offer whatever support we need.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's go to Scott next.
Hey, I'm Scott Clements, originally from Sylvester, Georgia. I'm now living in Keaton Beach. I'm a instructor in training. I've been diving since 2003. Um, I'd like to do either or.
Awesome. All right. Let's go to Jimena next. And listen, I've got to step away and take my I forgot about my 7:45 medication. So I'm gonna step away and I'm gonna ask you just to, the person after Jimena to speak. It shouldn't take me more than 30 seconds to grab them, but just in case, okay? So I've Jimena then Walt.
I'm Jimena Smith. I am from Miami, Florida, but I currently live in New Orleans. My diving experience, I have done public safety diving, scientific diving, and I did the FSU Panama City. I have a certificate in underwater crime scene investigation. My interest in serving on the search and recovery team is kind of like everyone. Whatever's needed, I'm comfortable in the water, but there's really a lot of important roles that happened on the land in those type of situations as well. So.
Hey, my name is Walt, Crawfordville, dive master. My favorite color is blue. I like long walks on the beach.
I'll leave
I
it to
like
Walt.
puppies.
This is
Um,
what happens when the cat is away, the mouse
um,
shut away.
oh, totally. I want to be in the water, dude. I'm where the rubber meets the road. Get me wet and let's go crazy. I want to be in the water.
Awesome. Well, and I've tasked Walt with being basically Chris's right hand in these efforts. So that's good. All right, let's see. Everyone kind of jumped around. So everyone jumped around. They're out of order now. So let's go to Sarah next.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sarah Tillman. I am from Fayetteville, North Carolina, military brat here. So some of my diving experience is with Gabrielle. Got my open water certification and working towards my dive master. So I'm hoping to get that done this semester since now I'm done with Disney and everything. So I have a lot more leniency now. So that's going to be fun. And I do have interest in search and recovery, probably definitely in the water. It'd be kind of fun to locate and retrieve things, I think. So,
What about bodies?
yeah, I mean, I think that's it's not cool for the person, but
Okay,
I
okay.
find it a little
Just
interesting.
making sure.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And definitely practice for tomorrow. You've got some teaching to do, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Let's go to Josh. Unmute yourself, Josh.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Josh Toman. I'm Sarah's dad in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and started diving in 2000. I would probably prefer to be on the search and recovery team in the water because I've slowly been building an outer layer that protects me from the cold and makes me more buoyant. So definitely a water guy.
I have developed that outer layer as well, actually, lately. But I still I can't stand the cold. So, all right. Chris?
Sorry, getting on the phone's a little crazy. Chris Franz. I am originally from Pontiac, Michigan, but moved around all over the country and ended up here in Tallahassee. Started diving in 2009. Have dove a lot of freshwater, Great Lakes, quarries, Pacific Ocean, and a couple opportunities out here in the Gulf. So I'm an instructor, newly minted. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. It's been really awesome since I've been here. I served on a volunteer public safety dive team in Kenosha County, in Kenosha, Wisconsin. That's my experience from there. So excited to continue to build that experience with everybody.
Thank you, Chris. And from after this course, Chris will be teaching this course. So he's essentially taking this course in order to teach this course. He's already got experience doing it. So I've asked him to just chime in at any time and share his experiences on the dive team, on the search team. So let's go to Victor next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victor Blanco. I'm originally from Venezuela, but currently I live in Perry, Florida for the last 8 years. I started diving in 1987 or 88, so it's been quite a while now. And I'm currently an instructor under the guidance of our beloved Gabrielle. And definitely, I'm interested in serving in the search and recovery team, either or. I will prefer to be in the water, but if I'm needed, I can be more help in the surface or any other task, count me in.
Awesome. And Victor is amazing. For anyone who doesn't know, Victor heads up the Artificial Reef Program, and he does so many great things with kids, including with 4-H in his area. So, and he also works with the law enforcement in Taylor County, right? So, and in the fire department too,
Yeah.
isn't that correct?
Yeah. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm completing the advance and nitrox of five deputies from the sheriff and the firefighting department.
That's awesome because a big part of what we want to do is work with rural law enforcement organizations. Because the bigger ones already have dive teams, the rural ones generally don't, and so we have a lot of rural areas where we could really help.
That's correct.
Yes, yeah. Let's see. Next up, we have Ronnie.
Hey, I'm Ronnie Ahmed. I'm from Orlando, Florida, but I've been in Tallahassee for the last 14 years, going on 14 years. I met Gabrielle in the ICU at TMH after a school shooting. She got me certified as HSA, then SEI, and I've climbed the ranks to instructor. Interest is, wherever would be best for me. I do feel like there's certain like physical limitations for me. It'd be cool if I could help from the air, like an airplane or something like that. But
Mhm.
I don't know how realistic that'll be.
Well, Ronnie got accepted, for anyone who doesn't know, Ronnie got accepted into a program to earn his pilot certification. And I fly also. It's been a while, but I fly, and I actually could see some value in having a plane spotting things from the air. So you just never know where those skills might come in handy, Ronnie.
Mhm.
So
I know there's cameras that help and stuff like that too.
yeah.
Mhm.
So all right. Well, thanks, Ronnie. I can't, everyone knows how much respect I have for Ronnie. He's my right hand. He's amazing. He's vice president of the nonprofit organization, and he's just doing great things. So, excuse me. Let's go to Bill Dawes next.
Hi, Gabrielle. Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Dawes. I'm actually from Florida. I'm a native Floridian. Not many people can say that. My diving experience includes, with a very short stint at the local diving shop, mainly under Gabrielle, and very happy about that because she'll give you the extra knowledge that you need, mainly to be safe, and I really like that a lot. My diving experience has been pretty diverse. I've dived out in the ocean. I've dived sinkholes, springs. They've all been really good. The springs are a little cold, but I guess you get over it, right? Uh, I really enjoy diving everywhere. Can't say that I have found a place that I did not enjoy diving. Uh, my interest in serving on a search and rescue team uh, would be obviously to help other people. I think would be the main goal, and there are a lot of roles with the search and recovery team, and more than just one. And I think all of them have their different unique. I don't want to say abilities, but are different unique. I
Roles.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm looking for. So,
Yeah, agreed, Bill. And it's good to have you back. I'm glad you're here.
yeah, thank you, Gabrielle.
All right. And Bill's the dive master. I don't know if you said that, but
I forgot that.
okay. All right. Let's go to Sean next. Good to see you, Sean. And the closed captioning is spelling your name wrong, but
Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, so my name's of course Sean. I've been diving for about a year and a half now. I started on some of my travels when I first began diving, but I feel like working with Gabrielle is where I really, learned to solidify my skills and stuff. And honestly, as for why I was being interested in the search and rescue, would just, just to help out people wherever there's availability to do so.
okay, great. And Sean, you are awaiting a cochlear implant surgery, are you not?
Yeah, that should be coming in around April, early in like the second I think they moved my appointment to.
Amazing. All right. Well, let us know in the chat box if at any point the closed captioning or anything is problematic. Let us know, and we'll try to communicate by chat. Okay. Next we
Okay,
have.
I will. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Next we have Michelle, and Michelle is the head of the North Florida search team, and it looks like unmuted herself. She may be available.
I pulled over. Hi, I'm Michelle McLaughlin. I'm actually a canine handler with the North Florida Search Team. I started it 2 years ago, and I'm very excited about this. And my goal is to be able to help in any way that I can. I'm not a water person. Getting in the cold water is very hard for me. I am a Floridian, though, born and raised here. But I wouldn't mind helping with logistics. Watch, whatever I can do. And then on the airplane side of what you guys were talking about, we actually have a meeting with the Civil Air Patrol Thursday night.
Nice.
They want to try to start working with us and try to be able to help us out too with some things and get where FEMA can see us as well. So so that was another thing. But yeah, I do canines. I have a live find, search and rescue dog, and an air scent. And we are also about to start training some of our dogs. We have a couple that are water certified, but we are hopefully in April, May, we're going to start getting a bunch of these dogs trained in water recovery, search and rescue. So hopefully on the boat, and then you guys can definitely do your part on it. So it's going to be an exciting partnership.
That's awesome. Most of us are dog people too. And so we look forward to working with you hand in hand to really make a difference.
Every part. Chris came out for a search last weekend, and I mean, yeah, and it was ground search. So I mean, any part once you're on, I mean, even if it's not water, we'd love to have you as any part of the search team.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next we have Chloe, and I don't know if she has a work meeting and she may not be able to unmute herself. So I'm just going to see if she doesn't unmute herself, it's okay, and we'll hear from her at some other point. Let's see. Next we have Robin.
Oh gosh, geez. Hi.
Hi, Robin.
My name is Robin, obviously. I've been diving since 2017. Open water was completed up in Pennsylvania in some cold quarries. But I've since finished my advanced certification and my nitrox down here in Florida. I currently reside in Tallahassee. And yeah, I'm down for kind of helping out wherever I'm needed.
Wonderful. All right. Let's see. Who have I missed? Did Anna Marie, did you speak already?
I did. I forgot to say that I currently live in Tallahassee, but yeah.
Did I miss anyone because everyone jumped around? Did I get everybody? All right, let's get started then. So, as a sport diver, have you ever been asked to look for something that was lost underwater? And I know personally some of you here have done so. I'd love to hear your stories. Anyone? Let's start with Robin. I'm going to call people out. Robin.
Okay, yeah, I saw that one coming.
I know you did.
So yeah, Gabrielle reached out to the Scuba Friends page asking for volunteers to come out to the Wassissa. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, don't kill me. But yeah, apparently a gentleman overturned his kayak, lost his phone, lost his wallet, lost a gun, and me and Monique set out in the late evening and was able to recover quite a few of the things. And the gentleman was able to make his flight the next day.
Yeah, let me just say that was awesome. For anyone who didn't hear the story, I was sick at the time and could not go. So I then put the plea out, and here these two lovely ladies, beautiful ladies, by the way, go. And this man from Texas who was visiting was, I'm sure, shocked that his heroes were these ladies who just killed it and found most of his items, including his identification, which he couldn't have got on the flight without the following day. So that was pretty awesome. And, so you don't necessarily have to have search and recovery experience to search and recover something. It's helpful. I know that you encountered some challenges that were unexpected, right? So what was one of the challenges that you encountered that you did not expect?
So, me not being from here, I've never been to the Wassissa. I was unfamiliar with the clarity of the water. And basically we couldn't see more than probably 6 inches in front of our face. Not to mention he ended up flipping the canoe in one of the most inconvenienced spots ever, where there was actually quite a bit of a current. So every time we went down, we were immediately pushed probably at least 3 or 5 feet. So it was very difficult to actually stay in one place. when we arrived, I was the only one with a flashlight. So we kind of had to just work as a team where I was the looker and Monique was just kind of she she would just stuff everything in her pockets whenever I found something. Um, and yeah, it was very difficult to actually maintain any sort of search pattern with how fast the current was going and us being unable to have any kind of like location bearing. But yeah, it was still a very interesting experience. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. One thing you should know, Robin, about the Wasissa is the area you were in was not typical of that river. And in fact, it does have great clarity, a lot of parts of the river. But like you said, the place that he ended up capsizing was one of the worst places possible. And probably that current that was resulting caused a lot of, stir up. And so what you experienced is really indicative of a lot of the kinds of things that we are going to need to be able to do in low visibility and such. And you did it without any training, so that's pretty awesome. Anyone else been asked to find something? Walt, you've been asked to look for something, haven't you?
I've looked for quite a few things, some family heirlooms or a family necklace, wallet and stuff, and a drone. I went looking for one day for somebody that requested it.
And Walt has a metal detector he can bring underwater, which is also really helpful. Um, Anyone else? I know a lot of us have lost things, haven't we, Ronnie? How many of you lost a camera to the ocean? Yeah, or anywhere else. So, there are times when we are going to lose things and we're going to find them, and those skills are helpful. So let me move on to dive planning and locating the objective. So this is where we're getting into the nitty-gritty of first objects, then we expand on that. So an object is lost, and what you need to do is have proper planning in order to find that. So a big part of proper planning is making sure that you have everything in place. The story that Robin shared was one of those like, oh my gosh, impromptu, something's lost. We need to go find it now. There was really not a lot of time to plan. They were fighting daylight and everything else. So ideally, you're going to plan with a buddy, with a dive team, and you're going to have two distinct phases where you plan. In the first one, it's actually pre-planning, and this is before the need arises. So you're going to make sure that you have your equipment configuration is good for the conditions that you're going in, that you have the right equipment and the right resources. In phase two, you're going to have on-site planning when the need occurs, and you're going to make sure that the team is briefed at all times as well on what's going on. So let's get a little deeper into pre-planning. These are a general set of plans that you're going to work on now before the need arises, before there is an emergency. And with pre-planning, we want to keep in mind, usually not a rescue, but in some cases there have been rescues. We know, those of us who've trained with Ed Sorensen, just as an example, Ed has been called in many times to do recoveries, and they've ended up being rescues. And he's also been called in to do rescues and then ended up being recoveries. So you just never know. Ed is a legend in the search and recovery cave system, and he's often called into international emergencies. And so, we think about how do we plan? What do we need to do? If a person were lost, what resources would we need to have? And how would we need to be prepared for this? So we want to do a needs analysis. A needs analysis is essentially saying, what do we have now and what do we need to have and where's the gap and how do we need to go ahead and get that? Also, any situations that might occur. So want to think about places in our area. We have the ocean, we have springs, we have quarries. We don't have a lot of lakes. We have some, but not a lot of lakes. And so much of the training that happens in other places doesn't necessarily apply to us. So we need to think about the situations that might occur that are specific to our area. And then we also want to do an area survey. And when we do an area survey, we want to plan for each water location. So just as an example, if we were going to do a search at Cherokee Sink versus the Gulf of Mexico, it would be very different in terms of how we would equip ourselves, right? Visibility, we know in at Cherokee Sink is probably going to be like very little visibility. And so we need to plan accordingly. Also, for pre-planning, we want to make sure that everybody is organized and prepared for those situations, that we have a team of people ready to go should the need arise. And also, when you plan, you're much more likely to have success. So planning is absolutely critical. 15 minutes of pre-planning ends up with 2 hours saved in search time. And so you'd also need to recognize that there are limitations to this. But if you plan well, you are very likely going to have a successful outcome. One part of planning, and I know many of you have fire and law enforcement backgrounds and you're familiar with this, but emergency action plans, even military also, emergency action plans. And so we're going to talk a little bit about search and recovery EAPs and what they should include. So this is a listing of all possible dive environments in the area. That's one thing we will want to do, and have a general list of guidelines for all dives. And then we want to have more specific guidelines that are for unique dive sites or areas that we might be in the water. Here are some things that EAPs must list. It must list each member that's needed, and we'll get into roles in a little bit. Responsibilities for each team member. And so I loved in our introductions hearing that some of us would prefer to be on logistics, some would prefer to be in the water, some are good with either, because all those things are needed. Every single role is needed. And I think Bill Dawes summed it up well. Like, no matter what you're doing, it's important when you're on a team like this. Some of the things that we may encounter, and if you've been following what's been going on with people being lost, people with autism tend to be drawn to the water. We very likely may be looking for children who are missing. We may be looking for people with Alzheimer's who have wandered away. That's a big need as well. And again, it hopefully is rescue, but there are times when it would be recovery. So we want to think about site equipment needs as well. And then when we consider possible dive environments, what Robin mentioned with where she and Monique were diving, what are we going to encounter? Do we know? In some cases it's unknowns. If it's a area of a river that we've not been to, and we just don't know, it might end up having current. It might end up being very low visibility. Generally in our area, one good thing is that when it comes to cold, we know that most of the areas other than the ocean, we know that that 68 to 72 degrees is going to be our low point for cold. We also need to think about if we're going to be in an area that may be contaminated. I was just thinking of the Gulf oil spill back, in the day. So, but if it's contaminated, we're going to need to have different kinds of protective gear. And I know that Chris talked about this in the interest meeting that we had. Talked about needing specialty dry suits for this kind of thing. We do have some quarries in our area. Mainly, I've actually dived in some quarries in our area, like heading mainly to the east is where I've done some searches in quarries. We have tons of rivers. We have good amount of ocean, and some lakes. So we have a lot of waters in our area that we would need to take into account for our EAP. So some of the considerations, and again, guys, just so you know, if anything's in the chat box that I need to see, just let's see, would need hazmat certs and special suits. Absolutely, yes. So if please chime in because it's hard for me to read the chat at the same time. Uh-oh, subtitles aren't available because the internet connection is slow. Let me try turning my video off and see if it helps. It helped. Okay. So, what I was saying about hazmat suits and that kind of thing, absolutely, you would need to have full protection in areas that may be extremely contaminated. Currents, waves, surf are all things that you need to take into account. I have done some searches and I've done some rescues at the jetties, just as an example, in St. Andrews in Panama City, and you do need to plan around the currents and the tides and all that kind of thing. The EAP also needs to rocky and we don't really have too many rocky and inaccessible shorelines in our area. The EAP also needs to list answers to some questions. So here are some questions we want to think about. What search procedures would work in blackwater, currents, and anything else that we may encounter? And what are some of the hazards? When or if it's appropriate to dive alone? Chris, do you want to touch on this when it comes to your experience on your search team?
Yeah. So just to say that on the team, when we're going to be diving, we want everybody to be in a dry suit. The key thing is looking and finding the right equipment and starting to look to get that set up for the team so that we can all be training in the same type of equipment when we get in, because this is though it is a volunteer team, we want to ensure that basically that critical safety equipment that is there to protect us. And though it could be a spring, if you're diving in a spring for a body recovery, or if you're even if diving in the ocean for body recovery, there's things there that is not, I would not ask a volunteer to get in there to put themselves in that situation, or a professional, by the way, just because we're not part of a city, county, state, federal agency doesn't mean that we have special superpowers where that doesn't affect us. So we're looking at getting that life support equipment to ensure that we are safe in that environment. So as far as diving alone, when it comes to public safety diving, in a lot of cases, when you're diving in near zero visibility, even if you are diving with a buddy, you don't have your buddy there as life support. So as you would in a recreational environment where you're always supposed to maintain contact with your buddy, if you have zero visibility because you're at the bottom of a very mucky area, you can't exactly use hand signals to tell your buddy that, hey, I'm out of air, there's a problem. So when you're diving alone in that situation, it's not just you're alone and unafraid under the water. We're going to start training on divers being tethered to a tender on the surface, and that tender is your lifeline. So when we look back to the pre-planning part, a lot of pre-planning will be team training. I know that as a diver in zero visibility under the water, there's a lot of anxiety. The nice thing is when you're tethered, now you have that connection. There's a physical connection that you can feel to the surface, which for me took a little anxiety away. And it's not just because a carabiner and a rope hooked up to a random person on the surface. I knew who my tender was. I had a relationship with my tender. We had trained together many times. I tended for the other divers, and other divers, tended for everybody else. So you knew who was there. You knew that you had someone that was going to make sure that you're safe, that was going to get you back to the surface. So though there is diving alone in public safety diving, especially dependent on some of the situations, it's there, but we put the proper protections in place through planning, training,
and the proper equipment to ensure that we keep everybody as safe as possible.
Thank you.
I'll just add to what Chris said. I'm glad that you touched on some of these things is like search and rescue, like you're going in kind of knowing sort of what you're doing. And if you're just going to search for things that belong to somebody who happens to still be alive and okay and have nothing to do with any crime scene, you know, then kind of like you were Anne-Marie did on this team. But if you're going for a search and rescue of anything involving a possible crime, not even a death, just a crime, you don't, you know, if you identify something, you don't want to touch it. You need to go get a person who is trained in crime scene, and part of, like Chris is saying, like, I'm trained in crime scene. That doesn't mean I can just go down there and, you know, assess the crime scene. It needs to be whatever law enforcement office is a part of that, because just like evidence on the surface, like anything that we do or we touch or we move, like it all needs to be same type of stuff as a regular crime scene, photographed, and can be on all types of stuff. And of course, in the case of a body recovery, you would have nothing to do with that. And I have this encyclopedia of underwater crime scene stuff, and I can share that with the team later on. It's pretty intense, and it's like everybody who has done that says their first time is not a good time, obviously. And so, yeah, but if you happen to come up on something like professional who is certified on
No, well, Gabrielle, so agree 100%. That was, you know, for us, you know, what was if you find a body, you know, we get called out for recovery. Once you identify where it's at, you know, you can't even think about bringing a body to the surface. There for Kenosha County, it was the coroner had to be on site before a body could be recovered. We were working with, for one, we were working with a county dive team out of Illinois who wasn't allowed to recover. So us as a volunteer team were the only ones that were authorized to recover. So, and then there were special things that the coroner wanted. So yeah, it becomes a very complicated process. And as a diver, as the, you know, dope on a rope down on the bottom, that's, you know, you are doing everything you can to accomplish a task. The rest of the team is doing their parts to accomplish the rest of the mission. So it's not, yeah, not everybody has to be completely certified for every aspect of it, but that's why we're a team. We all work together to accomplish the mission, whether it's just us or working with external agencies. So yeah, it's again, when we're looking at procedures that will be as a team, since we are just starting. So if we're joining the team all together, you are all on the forefront of this. So we'll all be working through this together. So the procedures that we develop will be what we train to and what we all agree upon, because we all have to be in agreement, because that's what's going to keep us all safe as we're executing. And gear configuration is something we'll be working together as well. I have a full gear configuration that I want to share with everybody to show what I've had the opportunity to dive previously, and see if everybody's on the same page, if everybody would agree with that. So again, a lot of this, yes, there's a million ways to skin the cat, but we're going to find what works out best for us.
Okay, so apologies for that. I dropped off a couple times trying to get decent internet connection. And what I ended up having to do is tether to my cell phone which is crazy because I've got a better internet connection tethering to my cell phone right now. When the internet connection is slow, unfortunately, closed captioning stop. And so then people can't actually understand what's going on if they can't hear. So I apologize for that and hope that that will be the end of it. I will leave my camera off with hopes that the connection will be somewhat better. It's still showing slow connection, but at least it's showing captioning. So, so other things that the EAP needs to list includes obviously equipment and emergency numbers needed. We need to do that for any area where we're in. And some of you, who've done the DRAM class, the Diver Rescue and Accident Management class, already have experience in this. I make you, tell me where's the nearest medical facility and who's in charge of the waterways here and that kind of thing. The EAP would need to have that for anywhere. You'd also want to have procedures for diver emergencies, such as entanglement, hypothermia, decompression sickness, all of these things. So we would want to obviously have safety equipment, with us at all times. Guidelines and options for determining if a situation is beyond our level of training or experience or even our equipment, because there may be times that it is, and we have to figure out, what do we need to do in these situations. So in terms of team members, there's going to be leadership, divers, shore support, boat handlers, and other support that may be necessary. Chris, with your team that you worked on previously, I know you mentioned tenders. What other roles would your team have?
So we had our dive master, the team leader. There was assistant team leader. So you had a primary and alternate diver. So if we needed two, if you only had one diver in the water, you have your 90% diver, which is your backup. So that's if there's an emergency, that's the individual that is tasked to immediately enter the water. So anytime you have a diver in the water, there's always a 90%. And that 90% diver also has a tender. So two divers, two tenders, and a team leader is pretty much the minimum that we'd use before putting any in the water. It was always very helpful when you have your team leader. The assistant team leader may be a scribe, but in a lot of cases, they're helping maintain, some of your support, your cordon of your area, ensuring that you're tied in with local law enforcement, emergency medical services, whoever's maintaining the, crowd control element. One of the big pieces that made things exceptionally helpful was having a scribe. So someone that could annotate your design of your search area. So you draw it out and actually do a sketch of your entire search area. So the more people you have for that, the more everyone can focus on one individual task. So you reduce the task loading and it makes everything a lot easier, especially when you're trying to be so detail oriented. So the tender is 100% focused on their line and their diver, receiving communications from them via line. They may have a headset or it may be going through a speaker box if there's communication to the microphone. So again, if you have someone that can monitor and assist with communication, someone that can ensure that all the equipment's set up, coordinate with the EMS to get divers checked for, their different elements. So again, on the surface support, there's a lot of different jobs. So anyone who is dove, everyone here knows that when you're going through your gear and doing all your gear checks, can be very intensive. And so you need someone that's going through and doing that. So again, some of the things aren't listed here. There is almost an infinite number of tasks that need to be assisted with, other than just the individual that may be on the bottom doing the search. So there's a lot of things that is always needs some help with.
Right. And so shore support, just as an example, would involve a number of people. It would involve people who do the pre-planning and the logistics and safety divers and lots of other things that are needed on shore, people who manage the equipment and communications and those kind of things. So the team leader should stay on the surface, be easily recognizable, and they are typically the person who's going to be the one working as a go-between with law enforcement and the incident command system if the scene is determined to be a crime scene. And it's always considered to be a crime scene unless proven otherwise. So the team leader determines who will handle the boats, the dives, who will be the tenders, who will serve as shore support. And obviously, the preparation and the pre-planning are absolutely key to this. And so you want to plan for as many possibilities that you might encounter. And that way the team is ready. So a lot of what we're going to be doing is planning, planning, planning so that when the need arises, we're ready. So we're going to do practice drills and skills and probably a lot more practicing than actually doing so that when the need arises, we are ready to go. And then we always want to have a good debrief after every scenario, whether it's practicing or the actual recovery, actual search and recovery or search and rescue. We want to make sure that we have a debrief. Excuse me. And in that debrief, we're going to figure out what went well, what do we need to tweak for our next opportunity. There's a lot of things to discuss, any challenges. So on site, that's where final planning takes place. And sometimes you're going to find that there are things that you neglected to plan for. There might be some needs that you forgot about. You want to make sure that you document everything and that you ensure that the site that you're at is what you're planning for. So when you arrive at the site, you want to determine if, as best you can, what's the depth of the water, what's the temperature, and in our case, it's pretty easy to determine temperature. Just as an example, if the recovery is in any springs, we know 68 to 72 degrees year round is what we can expect. In the ocean, we pretty much have a handle on what the temperatures are there as well. But we may need to consider waves or current or tidal actions. If we were, let's just say, in Perry, and the conditions there for high tide, low tide may impact our search. Hazards, depending on the bottom types. In some cases, many of the places that we dive are going to be very silty bottoms. And so we need to keep that in mind as we're searching. There also may be obstructions. A lot of our waterways have trees that that have fallen, especially with all the storms in our area. We may encounter a lot more trees underwater than we ever expected in the past, and those may create some obstacles. And in some cases, we may need to involve other people to help us with those obstacles or any other issues with the dive site. There are also personal considerations that should be taken into account. Excuse me. Divers who have consumed any kind of alcohol or medications, drugs that would impact their diving should not dive. We teach this in open water. We teach it, we preach it all the time. We don't want anyone under the influence, but there are also certain medications that may impact your ability to dive. And so let's just say that, you had a rough night and you took some NyQuil and some Sudafed and surprise that you're called in for a search and you just may not be ready for one. Your body may not be ready for one. You may expose yourself to potential decompression sickness if you are not, excuse me, completely medication free when it comes to things that would impact that. So definitely you do not want to dive. And it's not about just refusing to dive because a lot of us are like, no, we can do it. No, as a team, and the team leader certainly will be the ultimate decider of this, but you just absolutely should not dive if it's unsafe, okay? If the conditions are unsafe, you get to a site, you may say, I don't feel comfortable here and I don't want to get in the water. That's okay. That's completely your call. And if you have any gear, let's just assume that down the road we are able to get dry suits for everybody and they're like really nice dry suits, but there is something broken, we're not going to expect that you are going to go in the water with anything that potentially is broken or would not be sufficient for the task at hand, or anything that would jeopardize your safety. So the first team member on the scene will figure as best they can the object point of disappearance, the time of the incident. And we're saying object to object could be a person. Where did this happen? Approximately what time, if we have that. Any floating debris that may be in the area, any location of that. And then you're going to want to take into account any current or wind that may have been there at the time of the occurrence, and any witnesses that maybe have a little more information that will help you get to the bottom of what you need to be looking for and where. So you want to question everyone at the scene, and you want to ask questions early of people so that there is such a thing as recency. When things are fresh in people's minds, they're more likely to be accurate. As time goes on and they talk to other people, their memories get a little clouded about what they saw. You ideally don't want to question groups of people, because people will tend to feed off of other people. Anyone with law enforcement experience knows this, that when you question people together, they'll just, oh, yeah, yeah, and they'll just kind of go along with what the group says. So if you can pull people aside, that's really helpful. There will very likely be conflicting stories. There's a lot of research on, what did you see and how did you see it? People process information very differently. And so people are going to have conflicting information and stories about what they saw. But ideally, you're going to assimilate what you've got and break it into a starting point. So, I've taught through the years crime scene investigation, situational awareness, all these things. A big part of this process is making sure that you're gathering evidence and being as objective as possible with the facts that you have that will help you when you're actually doing the search. You do want to take notes. Chris mentioned a scribe. No matter what's happening, take notes. Even if the notes are electronic notes, dictate to your phone or whatever. But definitely those notes will come in handy. You want to always document. Ideally, you're going to make a sketch as well of the scene with prominent features. Document also includes taking photos. So those of you who do a lot of camera work, taking photos at the surface, and that especially is important. But then let's just say that you have found an object, you want to also document that. So again, objective is generic for anything that's lost, so locating the objective. Have witnesses show where the objective went down, and obviously you're going to do this in person. So you may have a situation where there's 3 witnesses and they all have different stories, right? So it has to do with different things. It has to do with their backgrounds, with how they process information. It could be their vantage points. So in this situation, you see the first witness is over here. There's a rock in the way, and there's a building over here. And then the second witness is closer to the pier. And so their vantage point is a little bit different. The third witness is over here, and there's some bushes in the way, and there's a tree over here. So they're just what they're seeing is different. And so where might you start the search? It might be kind of triangulating what they've seen and what they've thought they've seen, and starting the search kind of in between. Now, if the witness was on a boat, you want to ideally go to the location and mark those locations. So you want to place the object above and behind approximately 20 feet and have contrasting colors. Chris, did you do any boat search with your team?
We did some training with the Coast Guard and the county sheriff's boats. We did a little bit. It's definitely adds some complexity to it. We did use some surface markers like these for on shore. It's just really nice because you can put one of your team members out there. If you're out, someone's out, takes the boat witness out on a boat. They can, yeah, or someone from the shore can look. It's the nice thing is that you can say, oh, you know, you get the direction and everything there, but you just can't have someone standing there all the time as a reference. So what they're creating there is kind of that marker that you can set, just like if you do a night dive at the entry point. You don't have to have someone always standing there. It's just a visual reference that you can set. There is complexity off of the boat. Are you going to anchor? Are you going to drift? How are we going to maintain this? So there's a lot of complexity with the boat. Not a lot of experience with it. Only a couple training dives with that, but yeah, it's a little bit more complex. But you just take your time and again work through that and work with the experts in those areas. So
Great. And you mentioned surface marker buoys, and for anyone who doesn't know, with Scuba Educators International, we have new standards, and we're actually teaching surface marker deployment, not DSMB, SMB. So surface marker buoy deployment in open water now. It's a requirement to teach it in open water, and we have the ability to teach dry suit and nitrox in the open water class as a combination. So it's pretty interesting that these skills, everyone will be better equipped with surface marker buoys. Most of us are very experienced now with DSMBs, so delayed surface marker buoys, but these kind of things will come in handy for what we're doing. We also have a lot of lift bags and other things that we'll be practicing with, and that will help us with our searches. So if a witness was on the boat, you want to go to that location and mark with a GPS. And if the witness was involved, there in some cases there may not be they may not be the best witnesses because the incidents can be potentially dangerous, and they could be concerned for their own life, or what they have. And so those are the kind of things you need to take into account. Is this a witness who's going to actually be helpful? Determining the search area. Where did the object enter the water? And then again, think about those water conditions. So for still or slow moving water, the initial search area should be about 1.5 or more times the depth. So, and if there's current, you need to take that into account as well. So with a still water search area, the point of disappearance is located here, and so you would say 1.5 times the depth. You would look deeper than where the search would begin. So with still or slow moving water, you would obviously have to take that into account too. With moving water, that objects are potentially going to move as well. So the object could be carried down current, and I don't know about you, if you ever lost anything in the water or even on land. This just reminds me of the time I put my wallet on top of my car and I drove away and I lost my wallet, and it was at my house. And so what did I do? I then like placed a similar object on the car to try to see like where would it have dropped off, kind of thing, you know. So you need to think about the speed of the current and the time that a floating object would take to get to wherever it is. So how long has it been out there? The length of the boat divided by the time times 0.6 will give you an approximate speed in knots. Bill, you're an avid, actually both Bills I think are pretty avid boaters and Victor too, right? What are your thoughts on moving water and have you lost something where you needed to recover it in moving water and how did you handle those? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It's
I
much
have
more difficult.
lost stuff and it's still lost.
All right. What about the other Bill? I think I heard him talking.
I say it's a lot more difficult to find something that you dropped in the water for sure, because you got two directions. You got up and down, and then you got north, south, east, and west. Guess that's more than two. Uh, and then you got also have to take into consideration the flow of the water. So you have quite a bit going on there. I have dropped stuff off the corner, turned right around to go get it, never found it again. So you just have to, you have to keep your eye on it if you want to keep it.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, one thing is to understand that sometimes that might be a superficial layer, a surface layer of with one speed, and then the bottom layer can be moving in a different speed. And this is very common when we have thermoclines or other type of clines in the water column that can affect not only the speed of the object moving through the water, but also how fast it sinks. Because there's different densities of the water in that thing. So it is pretty difficult to find and objects in currents, especially the faster the current, the more likely the object is going to move farther. So you will need to really expand your search area, which sometimes make it very difficult because of depth, how much air you have, and all these other factors.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I know I've been on many boats where things were lost and it's very challenging to find them. And what Victor said about the surface current, we know that in our area, especially in the Gulf of Mexico near Panama City, the surface area can be the surface current can be really fast. And then like 10, 15 feet, it's fine, it's calm. And that plays a role too. And how floaty is the object? Did it sink all the way? So these are kinds of things to take into account. So let's go ahead and look at an example. So let's just say that a cup drifts the length of a 30-foot boat in 10 seconds. And so we take 30 divided by 10 is 3 feet per second. And 3 times 0.6 is 1.8 knots, which is too strong to swim against. So in moving water, objects could also get caught. And so I'm thinking about in springs, it could be, we don't have current in springs, we have flow in springs. We do have a lot of things underwater in springs, including those trees, and those trees have greatly increased with all the storms that we've had. And so the object could have started to sink and then gotten caught up in a tree underwater. It could have gotten caught up in debris or something else. So those are things to consider as well. So always we want to think about moving water and how best to handle it. So here is a depiction of current moving this way in a dam. We do have some dams in our area too, where we might be called to do a search. And so, there could be some rocks and debris, and the search would involve a lot of going, from one end of the search pattern to the other, but keeping in mind that the current may have carried the object beyond where you would originally think that the search area would be. So defining the search area is challenging as well. You want to use buoys whenever possible to define the perimeter of the search area. And then the point of disappearance could also become the center and the starting point. So search patterns are things that we need to keep in mind. Most of you who've had the search and rescue class the diver rescue and accident management class have done some search patterns looking for objects before. But you need to think about the conditions present. When Robin shared her story of what they were doing, there really wasn't a search pattern that was possible. It's like, hey, let's just stay safe and stay together and try to do what we need to do. You might need tide tables if you're in the Gulf of Mexico, as an example, navigational charts. You might need those things. So the team leader assigns the dive order, line tenders, safety divers, and you're going to have one safety diver minimum for every 2 divers down. So there you go with needing a lot of people at the surface as well. So to summarize, the very first part of our discussion here, there's 2 stages of planning. We have pre-planning and we have on-site or at-site planning. And the goal is safety. Number one thing is safety, 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 okay? Then efficient recovery, because you really want people to go home at the end of the day, no matter what. So ideally, you're going to also recover a person, an object, whatever, you're going to recover them as well. But there may be times that all your efforts are for nothing, and you just have to keep that in mind, that these things are part of what happens with search teams. It's not like every single time you go to search, you're going to be successful. So so we're going to talk, actually, I don't know why this came up now, but excuse me for my coughing. It's the meds that I'm on. The classroom schedule, like I said, we're going to need to break this into 2 because we don't have enough time to cover everything tonight. I'm going to just get a drink of water. Excuse me. So the hours, there are a lot of hours. Excuse me, I'm just going to step away for a minute and cough one moment so I don't cough into the
I'll just get in one more Go Birds.
Sorry about that. I am not sick, guys. This is it's a side effect of one of the medications I'm taking, unfortunately. So so we have a lot. How many, Chris, how many lectures total is this supposed to be? We're going to combine. We're going to try to go through about 3 tonight. I think it's 8. There is an exam. You know how I feel about exams, right?
Yeah.
So I'm fine with open book exams. So I don't need people to memorize. So are you good with that, Chris?
No, I agree. Especially for this, it's the key is being able to retain the concepts. It's there are going to be specific items that we definitely want to have, but that's why you also have operating procedures. So again, we want people to take things away, but yeah, no, I think open book is fine. And I said some of the PowerPoints that were there, I think there's like about 14 total, but I know it's a lot of those would be easy to combine them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I've already
it was
combined and deleted. So
yeah.
yeah.
So I think two sessions is definitely good there. And then again, the exam is a more higher level, and once we start getting into team planning and team specifics, it'll get a little bit more complicated. But that's going to be repetitive training that will get that all straightened out.
Great. So I did want to check in with everyone and see how your schedule is to do the second portion. Is everyone possibly available a week from tonight or the following Tuesday, since we managed to all get together on a Tuesday? Does that work for everyone, or is that not good?
It's good for me.
Isn't that when the
Don't we
next?
have Dive Master
Yeah,
that
the
day?
Dive Master one is.
Exactly, which is why I'm thinking since we have Dive Master, we should go ahead and do this. And then we can do dive master after that.
Oh,
I'm fine with that.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay, because we already had blocked that Tuesday. Is it, can anyone not make it?
so the dive master starts at 8. So what time would this start?
We would stick with 7:30 if that'll work. If that works for everyone.
Is it gonna go on past that? I have to wake up really early to get onto my site.
I don't know. But worst case scenario, we can
Really early.
record it and you can catch up later, Jimena, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So there are also dives involved with this, and there are 8 dives. I also really like to do some training in the pool. So, but 8 dives are involved. We already talked about the written exam. So there are 3 National Fire Protection Association training levels: awareness, operations, and technician, and this course exceeds the awareness level. So recovery operations can be similar to commercial diving. And Chris already mentioned that, the gear is intensive. We already know that the conditions are probably not going to be beautiful because, if a person or object is lost, it's probably not in clear, perfect water. So we can expect that conditions may be challenging. Now, what's not included in the course includes overhead environments, swift water, and hazardous environments, body recovery, crime scene investigations. This is introduction only, what we're doing right now, okay? So objectives include refreshing on dive skills, doing search patterns with and without current, underwater navigation, which we all could always use more work with. Limited visibility dives, which I highly recommend we go to Cherokee for that. Night dives, rigging, salvage, practice with any gear that we would be using for search and recovery. I've already mentioned local dive environment. SAC rate is another thing we are now teaching in open water. And so that's going to be a big part of the objectives is gas management for this kind of work. Line tendering is another skill, single or multiple diver training, and then search and recovery with use of a boat. So there should be 8 open water search and recovery related dives that cover that. So prerequisites include swimming ability, good mental and physical health, 15 log dives with 5 night or limited visibility dives. If you're not at that number yet, we can get it to you pretty quickly. You also need to be current in first aid and CPR. And so if you're not current, again, we can help you with that. Diver rescue and accident management is also recommended for recreational search and recovery divers, and it's required for public safety divers or awareness level 1. So you really do need to have DRAM. Let's go into diver equipment. And this is something I think where Chris is really going to be able to help us in sharing some of his experiences with what kind of gear we may need. So you are, don't worry if you don't have your own stuff. The goal of this is to ultimately get some funding that we can supply the gear. But we'll talk about, scuba gear, what's needed, thermal protection, auxiliary and safety items, line handling and tending, and additional equipment. So, as of the publication of this course, snorkel was still part of it. Obviously, if we're in areas that snorkels wouldn't be smart, we wouldn't use a snorkel when we're diving. Mask, fin, boots. We're probably going to be using full face masks in some cases. Buoyancy compensation devices, weight systems, regulator systems, information systems, thermal protection, And Chris mentioned needing dry suits. There may be cases where we would just be in wetsuits, or, it could be like, for all we know, it could be 90-degree ocean water. Um, Gas, we need to have cylinders, and for any search and recovery efforts, I'm happy to provide cylinders for people. And we may, depending on the situation, need an alternate air source. Chris, for your search team, did you have alternate air sources?
Yes, we did. So every diver had a primary cylinder, which was aluminum 80 in most cases. For the most part, we all provided our own. We also had a pony that was with a pony mount that was mounted adjacent to our 80. So that pony and that primary cylinder both attached to a switch block. So what a switch block is it's if you think about the function of a regulator, all it is it's a place to route low pressure, the low pressure off of your first stage too, and it's a singular point where you can switch between two air sources for your full face mask. Because what you don't want to do is, if you are in a contaminated water environment, is to have to take your full face mask off and put a regulator in your mouth, or have to switch over to something else. So what this allows you to do is switch between primary and pony without having to do anything except turn a valve. And then both of those hoses that went from your pony and primary cylinder first stages were quick release, so that you could switch over to a bailout or an emergency spare cylinder that an emergency diver could bring down to you. So if you happen to be entangled, you'd consumed your primary cylinder, you had to switch to your pony, then a safety diver could bring down another cylinder with a regulator already on it and plug it into your switch block. So it's just an extra level. So not only an alternate air source, but an emergency air source on top of your alternate that you're carrying. So we're going to be using a setup very similarly, which equals lots and lots and lots of training so we can all get comfortable with something that's going to be a somewhat of a foreign concept to be working with. So that's what we'll be doing on the team, at least.
Sounds great. Thank you. There are also going to be other safety items needed and auxiliary items, marker buoys, Chris mentioned, guidelines, safety lines. He just talked about emergency breathing systems. That's great. Underwater lights. Robin said they only had one light between them, and with the sun was starting to set, definitely we want to make sure that we have lots of lights, reel line, and we'll practice some reel skills as well. Those are important. Knife, cutting tools. Everyone should have these anyway. First aid equipment. Now, one thing you want to do is don't bring absolutely everything on a dive. You want to only carry needed items for a specific dive and make sure that everything is in working order. So there are different types of lines that we're going to be working with for handling and tending those lines. Buddy, search, guide, safety, anchor, and rigging. So lines that are used for rigging could include wire, cable, chain, line. What did you use for rigging, Chris, when you did your team?
So we didn't do a lot of rigging. Didn't have much of an experience. I know that there were a couple call outs that I didn't get a chance to go to that involved cars that had slid down on a boat ramp. At that point, we hooked up to the vehicle based on the guidance of a tow truck driver, and they had their own rigging equipment that they brought. So if it's, I believe I would like to, unless we have someone on the team that is experienced in rigging, staying within the recreational bounds of rigging, not exceeding that. I think it's 1 to 200 pounds is the max we look at. And at that point, you're just using the rigging that comes with your lift bag or anything. But that's again, the critical thing when it comes down to rigging lines is knowing what the rated capacity of whatever lines, chains, equipment that you're using. So that's either manufacturer or having a professional get that information to you. I think that's the most critical part of understanding.
Great. And do we have people on our team who have experience with rigging?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Yes, I do.
Good. Okay, so you all can help us too when we get to this point, especially when we're practicing. So, all right. So I mentioned lift bags earlier. We're gonna work with fastening the lift bag to an object, and any lines would need to have enough tensile strength, 3 to 4 times the calculated lift capacity. And then knots. Ronnie, it's been a while since Ronnie did a knot tying session for us, but knots are important too when it comes to rigging, and so bow lines are best to help securely fasten the object. And then attachment hardware need to have required strength as well. These are things like double enders, carabiners, and so on. So nylon versus polypropylene. All right. So I'm thinking, who here is my line person who can tell me why we would have nylon versus polypropylene?
Isn't polypropylene, isn't that the one that floats? Am I making that up?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
I'm pretty sure that that's the one. It's floatier, and that's what you would use for something on the surface more so.
Yeah.
Gabrielle, do you remember when we deployed last year the large pyramids that they were rigged with very thick rope, and
Yes.
actually that was floating, and we have to go down there and retrieve everything from the reef.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Thanks for the reminder, Victor. Wow. So, uh, regarding color coding, what are your experiences with that, with colors? Anyone? Excuse
We
me,
use
I'm gonna cough for just a second. I'll be right back.
So what we color coded our ropes on the team, whether it was a tag line, all of our actually our static lines for tending divers were all the same color. They were all in the same colored throw bags. So someone didn't accidentally grab, a tag line, which could be, a polypropylene line attached that was meant for, a throw or something. Someone didn't grab that out of the truck or in an incident instead of an actual static line for a diver. In addition to the ropes themselves, we also had each one of the tender lines were marked by distance. So we marked ours every 10 feet. We're marked in 10-foot increments to give the tender an ability to know when you're setting up your search areas, which we'll go through in the tender, talking about line tending briefly. Just allows the tender a little bit more knowledge of setting your gaps or for the different search patterns when the diver's going. So we marked them in that way. Having different length lines, it was pretty critical because you don't want to have to roll out several hundred feet if you only need 50 foot of line. It takes a lot of extra effort to try and maintain control of that line. But and then what they're talking about here when it says too long, single might not be transmitted. Really with that's more or less they're talking about the tension on the line from tender to diver. So you want to maintain enough tension on the line so that it doesn't become entangled on something. So if you have a big old slack piece of line underwater, the static lines that you use are not buoyant. So it could it could get caught on something. You want to maintain that good tension on the line. And because if you're trying to do a line pull, if your diver's trying to say, hey, I have a problem, so they're trying to send their pull signal up on the rope. But if you've left a lot of slack in it, you might not get that signal up at the surface. And similarly at the surface, if you haven't maintained enough tension or the diver hasn't maintained enough tension, then the signal can't get through from one end to the other. But again, when you're talking about a length of rope, if you have several hundred feet, that's a lot of extra line that you're trying to manage on the surface if you only have 60, 70 feet out there. So I think this also applies heavily if you're using a boat, knowing that you have to have extra line. It's not just about, oh, it's 20 feet deep here, I'll drop the anchor. All I need to have is 20 feet of line. So you're going to need probably 60 foot of rope or chain to keep your boat anchored, especially in current.
All right.
I'll just add about color. So especially when you're diving in low to zero visibility water, when we were diving in that for archaeology stuff in like the Alcilla, is to use pink.
I remember you
and
saying that he meant a pink.
Yes, it's pink. And so anything like fluorescent pink. And so especially if you're marking those lines like Chris is talking about, so you can, if you're doing search patterns where you have to go out a certain extent each time, is to just take into account the visibility variances within the water so you can mark properly.
Very good. Thank you. And of course, with any lines, we want to make sure that we care for them well. If they are frayed or worn or cut, we want to get rid of them or cut that part off. We want to keep free of sand and grit. Now, there's going to obviously be a lot of sand that is involved in many of the places that we're searching, but that will break down fibers by abrasion. And if at all possible, we want to avoid any sharp bends in the line, walking on it, any chemicals, and then knotting or tying lines together to make them long enough. So we really want to have long enough line without tying knots in them. And then we do want to have whip ends and connections to help care for the line. Also, we want to store them out of direct sunlight, like everything else that we do with scuba diving. A cool, dry atmosphere is ideal, but hey, we live in Florida, so we just need to get really good quality lines. Coiling lines is something that is important. I have a technique that I can share when we're together with coiling. I coiled line for in the television business for years, so the over under technique works really well. Forget about ice diving. Thankfully, we don't ever have to deal with that here. We are not going to be doing any ice diving. So you don't want to overload a line, and you do want to distribute wear. So if you're wondering what the loud noises are in the background for anyone who can hear, that's my puppy wrestling with my dog right now. So apologies for any background noise. So for surface tended diver lines, you obviously need to be trained in line handling and search patterns. And trained tenders are absolutely required. The line can be used for signaling or for orientation. And you cannot get distracted if you are a tenderer. You must pay full attention because you are a lifeline for the divers. So you need to be alert for any line signals. And then decide who holds the loop and decide the length of the line. So line tension is absolutely key. And like I said, it's the lifeline, the communication. So if there's too much tension, the diver can't swim or move. And if there's too little tension, then the signal can't get through and there's possible entanglement. So that would obviously compromise the search area. We will practice lines a lot with our dives and really get this dialed in. So there are different signals that we're going to be using, and they're not universal, just like with scuba signals. They're not universal. So we want to agree as a team, and I'm going to let Chris determine with Walt's assistance as well what would be the best line signals for us. So here's an example of what we might decide on, and again, we'll get into this more when we are together. But one pull would be, "Are you okay?" from the tender, and then the diver would pull back once saying, "I'm okay." Two pulls, move out further from the tender. the diver, 2 pulls, give me more line. 3 pulls, the tender means come in. The diver means take up the slack. 4 pulls, it's an emergency, end the dive. And the same goes for the diver, emergency, I'm coming in, I'm getting out of the water. And then 2 pulls could be I'm fouled, send help. And so these are some examples. Chris, how was your communication? Was it similar to this, or did you have something else for your pulls, number of pulls? Chris? Can anyone hear me?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately,
I started
with
to
the
think I lost my internet.
with the background, it's not letting me show the card. So we had all. It's sort of similar to this for us. Tender. So tender to diver. At 1 pull. So if I'm a diver and I get 1 pull, that means to stop and face the line. If I'm at that, it also is telling me to take up any slack or to ask if I'm okay. So for me, one diver as a diver to tender, it was one is I'm okay. So if I got one pull on there, then I'm going to stop and face the line. After I've checked if the line is slack. If the line is slack, I'm going to take up the slack and then send one. It's okay. 2 for we didn't have a 2. 3 was go right. So if I'm the tender to the diver, 3 pulls was go to your right. 4 pulls was go left. 2 pulls was search immediate area. 3 pulls was stand by and just stand by for signal. And then 4 pulls was go ahead and ascend. From the diver side, 1 pull, I'm okay, or repeat signal. 2 pulls from diver to tender was profiler make a notation, which means that there is an item of interest that I want you to mark. So there's something here, not sure what it is, but I'm going to continue searching. 2 pulls 3 times was I have a problem. I'm trying to figure it out myself, but get the safety diver on alert. 3 pulls 3 times was I'm okay, but I need some help. So send the safety diver. 4 pulls and 4 pulls was I need immediate assistance. And then 6 pulls 3 times was I found my target. So it was a little bit, it's close to this. We had a little bit more information, and we trained this a lot, a lot. So it's we also had communication through our full face masks, but primary comms was through line pole. Secondary comms was through the radio, because the line poles did not follow up. It was the radios were sometimes spotty.
So we had
Great.
similar stuff to what Chris was mentioning. I guess it was because of the type of things that we were doing was similar to what Chris was doing. And we also had full face mask, but ours was first comms, second was line if comms weren't working. But I think, like Chris mentioned, and we've said before, is just the fact that you need to take like the mock drills of these so seriously. We practiced so much, and it might seem like a lot, but we had 8 to 10 pages of instructionals, and whoever the lead was had to go through all these things, and part of that was the line tending. And this might be helpful if it's going to be like the same team consistently working. Is we had obviously you should know them and you should be brushed up on them, but just in case, especially if it wasn't an emergency call, we had that always on the clipboard that we were using, and so that people could just in case look at it. So obviously if it's an emergency, then you know that one pretty well, but if it's any of the other ones, you would have the opportunity to look at some type of write-up in between.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Great idea. So we'll get those firmed up, certainly by our first practice session. Make sure that we're all on the same page. And here's an example of oath. So 1 pull okay, 2 pulls advance, add more line, 3 pulls toward take up line, 4 pulls help, pull me in. So tending line for cold water and air, tenderers should be on the lookout. We don't really need, honestly, this is not a huge concern where we live. So we're not going to have any frozen open regulators here. So I'm actually going to kind of skip this completely. Okay. So but cold is relative, right? We're not going to have frozen regulators, but the risk of hypothermia is still there, hypothermia. So we do want to think about maybe not necessarily waterproof gloves, but thicker gloves, layered clothing. We may want to limit exposure time if depending on the cold. We may want to have rewarming in shelter. It's crazy that we have to say non-alcoholic fluids, but certainly hot fluids would be helpful too. So, we did have an unseasonably cold couple of weeks ago. It's crazy because it's been in like the mid 80s since then, but there may be times where the surface is colder than the underwater, and the surface people may be at risk as well. So we just want to take all of these things into account. Knots are something else that we're going to be practicing. I mentioned bowlines earlier. How many of you are really good at knot tying? I'm just curious. I know Ronnie is because Ronnie's given us all. Victor is. Who else do we have? Who are our knot tiers here?
Boy Scouts
Andrea.
skills.
Yes, that's an important skill. So those of you, Andrea, others who, if you're really experienced with knot tying, we're actually going to have, when we all come together, you're going to help us, okay? You're going to show us your techniques, and you're going to help those of us who are a little more challenged with knot tying because it is important. Additional equipment that we want to consider, transportation boats, personal flotation devices, anchors, carabiners, evacuation baskets, uh, diving planes. There you go, Ronnie. That's for you. Diver propulsion vehicles. We have one of these if we need it. Certainly we can donate it to the cause. We have a DPV, air supply systems. Lifting equipment. We have a bunch of lift bags. We're going to get all kinds of practice with lift bags. In fact, everyone can have their own lift bag, right? Um, Lighting equipment, camera systems as well, and surface communications, underwater communications. Chris mentioned comms. If we get full face masks for the dive team, it would certainly be my intention to get comms so that we can communicate with each other underwater. I have a full face mask now that has a capability of comms, but I don't use it. And Chris has another brand. Does yours have comms, Chris?
Yes, it does.
Interesting. So
Mine
maybe
has two. I have one with
ah,
the receptor and the mic integrated to my mask.
what
So
what
I'm
what brand do you have, Victor?
Uh, Give me just a second.
Okay.
So the Ocean Reef and OTS will talk to each other. It's not like channel 1A to channel 1A, but they do match up. This I had an OTS and I was talking to our team, Ocean Reefs.
Yeah, I have Ocean Reef and the GSM submarine messenger system.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So
We
yeah,
can.
so we already have the ability for comms. That's great. Just on the team. Slates, GPS, sonar, metal detectors. Does anyone besides Walt have a metal detector?
I got one.
Wait, who has four?
Scott.
Awesome, Scott. Nice. All right. And so anyway, just to summarize this next section, the minimum equipment is going to be needed is full scuba gear, air supply, and additional equipment. The idea would be that we would, get some funding and get the right gear for everybody on the team. So we want to prepare. This is just weird that this is popped in here, but okay, I don't know. Yeah, just ignore this. I don't know why this slide is just so random in the middle of everything. Hey, prepare, take notes. You don't need to take notes. Just pay attention. Let's talk about diving hazards because these are important. And this is our fourth area that we're covering. So we've already mentioned that the chance of search and recovery in a really beautiful, calm, clear water is not very likely. So we need to be prepared for anything. Could be muddy rivers, silty bottoms, it could be anything. Quarries, again, we don't really have a lot of quarries here, but it's possible. So it's going to be beyond a recreational dive. We always want to prepare and think about the kinds of hazards that we may encounter and what those hazards may have impacts wise on the diver and equipment that we need to have to help reduce risks and make sure that everybody stays safe. I already mentioned hypothermia, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as a risk factor. And then, of course, we want to avoid decompression, illness, and we'll talk about that too. So, recovery work can be very time consuming and it's hard work. And the saying goes that it's 12 times harder than recreational diving. It's monotonous and it can be stressful. Now, for some of us, we like monotonous stuff, right? We like to do things over and over again. So it actually can be something that people enjoy is doing the monotony of the search. But it's sometimes it's a necessary thing to do. So we need to determine hazards and obviously do our best to mitigate any dangers posed by those hazards. And then we want to plan our dives with safety in mind at all times. So when we're first contacted by somebody about something or somebody that's missing, we want to learn as much as possible from whatever method of communication that we've been reached out to. We want to arrive at the scene safely. We want to obviously obey all laws, including speed limits in getting there. And it's a recovery in many cases, not a rescue of a human being. But that being said, I've mentioned that, somebody that we work pretty closely with who is really great at search and recovery has been called out for recoveries and ended up doing rescues. Um, and in some cases, he was called to do rescues and done recoveries. So you just never really know what you're getting into. Um, so there may be some hazards with entry and exit. We're not going to encounter anything like this picture. I can tell you that because we don't have that big a rocks. Although the jetties might be somewhat like that. Um, Now, if we did encounter anything that was slippery, we would want to have tarps and other appropriate materials for footing, and we would want to have a line to help increase safety and use boats for areas that couldn't otherwise be accessed. So, site conditions may include bad visibility, silt, submerged objects, currents, waves, eddies, and strainers, debris, entanglements. We've talked a little bit about this before, but one possibility is contaminated water, polluted water. We don't really know what we're going to get into, but we need to plan for all of these things. So, again, no ice here. We might have overhead environments. Deep water with possible decompression could be a possibility, in which case we would have planned decompression diving. Bad weather is another thing. When we plan our recreational dives, we can call it when the weather's bad. But if we're going in to do a search, we may have to contend with some bad weather. Obviously, we would not put ourselves at risk, I should say. If the bad weather included, thunderstorms, we would not put ourselves at risk if there's lightning in the area. That just goes without saying. Just want everyone to know that, okay? But if, the weather is less than ideal, if it's maybe a little cold and rainy and that kind of thing, well, we're still going to go and give our best effort to locate a person. So there may also be hazardous aquatic life. Really, what should we be aware of in our area? What harmful animals or plants, if any, should we be aware of in our area? Anyone?
Well, moccasins, rattlesnakes, a lot of snakes. I'm not sure. I know gators during certain times of year or near a nest would be a major problem. But again, that's the planning piece. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about, especially after the search call out that I did with the search team, they were, it was right on the edge of a swamp, and thinking, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really wish I brought some gators out here, some snake gators, to cover up my boots just in case. But thankfully, the temperature is a little bit cool, so weren't worried about that. But those are kind of things I'm more concerned about.
So when you said fake gators to cover up your boots, do you mean like covers for your boots?
Yeah, the snake gators. So it goes across your shin. So basically from above your boot line up to just below your knee. It's I'm trying to think it a gate
They almost
like
look like hockey
Right,
protectors
right.
for
But
your calves.
I thought I heard you say before that alligators were a concern. Did you not say that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so alligators,
Okay.
especially around a nesting area or certain times of year, would be more aggressive than others. So again, that planning piece.
Any other thoughts on this? Animals or plants that may be harmful in our local environment?
I mean, I would just
definitely. Oh, sorry.
sorry. That typical to like any, if you're a dive master and you're doing a dive plan, or anybody who's going out and doing a dive plan, you're gonna plan the same way, and as much as you know with the information that you know. When we were going out and doing these type of things for the various environments, we would have checklists for different types of equipment that you definitely want to bring and want to have, and then sometimes you get there, like we were saying before, which is common in, I think, almost all diving. Sometimes you get to somewhere and it's not what you expected. And so then you obviously don't dive because you don't want to create an extra search or recovery on top of the one that you're already a part of. But we have so much information online right now and so much information about the various areas and all of the places that we dive or waterways. So it's just, making sure that you're creating your emergency action plan, which is similar to a dive plan with that added extra stuff onto it.
Thank you. Very good. And just so Sean knows, the closed captioning misheard Jimena when she said dive, and it thought she said die. So just to let you know, she said dive. Okay. So, all
Yeah,
right.
no die planning, the opposite of that.
All right. So let's move on then. So I know you all are getting tired, and I want to let you know that we will, no matter what, we will wrap up before 10 o'clock, okay? So sit tight with me as we try to get through a little bit more here. Did someone put something in the chat box?
We were being ornery.
Oh, okay. That's funny. Okay, got it.
Well, Josh mentioned lionfish and tying them to the line.
That's great. All right. Bottom sediments. I obviously don't really want to disturb them unless they, unless you have to dig into the silt to try to find something. There may be hazards there. Neutral buoyancy and streamlining are really important. Thankfully, we teach it, we preach it, we know how to be neutrally buoyant. That's going to be super important when you're doing a search. Use proper finning techniques. We teach this and preach this all the time too. So, we're going to make sure that our finning techniques are appropriate for where we are, and use floating lines. Now, visibility, when Robin was talking about the story of you, she could barely see her hand in front of her face. That it may be that that's the case in some of the places that we're going to be. So you have to have a sense of touch. Your arm's going to be out in front. Jimena mentioned wearing pink gloves and things so she could see things. So you want to have your arm in front of you for protection because you'd rather have your arm hit something than your head. It's much like when you're coming up from a dive, you want to have your arm up, right? So just expect that there may be limited visibility, and we're going to practice in low visibility so that everyone gets comfortable. So what is clouding the water in the cup on the left in this picture?
Sediment.
Yeah, sediment. And so sediment could be in almost any waterway that we're in. So turbidity can result from algae, mud, clay, and silt. And the heavier the particle, the faster it settles out. The particle color determines the water color, and we have a lot of greens around here, but it could be anything. So some of the rivers, I was just on a hike on Saturday on the Suwannee River, and the Suwannee River is an example of where we might actually need to, do some searching and recovering. It is pretty challenging to access. The shoreline is not flat, and it's very tannic from all the trees. And so these are the kind of things to keep in mind. In this case, we have a lot of brown sediment. It's really not it's just tannic from the trees. So the visibility is limited by that. And so is access to the water is very challenging in some places. So buoyancy, you're going to need to determine the need to be neutral or negative, depending on the conditions. And obviously, when you have good buoyancy, you're gonna you're going to be less stressed. You're going to have better air consumption. It's going to help with your search. Now, good buoyancy, when you're starting to do these search skills, is sometimes when you're task loading, it's going to be more challenging. And so it's important to practice. Here I go again. Sorry. It's important to practice working on buoyancy while doing these tasks that are associated with search and recovery. You want to keep the search pattern simple and ideally avoid silting up things. Debris may be in the water, especially if it's a crime scene. It could be a crashed car. Who knows, right? And so you want to make sure that entrapment, that you don't get trapped, that you're very safe. And that you don't get entangled as well. Let me just get a sip of water here. Chris, why don't you speak for a minute while I cough?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, unfortunately, the nature of this is the bottom environment. If you're looking for something down there around here, it could be something. It could be a swampy area where an area that is flooded, so you get the tree stumps or limbs. And again, if it is zero visibility, so it's impossible to send another diver down. Again, this could be one of those factors that determine whether we send two divers in the water with a buddy line. Instead of having someone tethered, you might not have an option. So as you can see in the photo here, it's very reminiscent of some of the waterways here in Florida where you are close to the shore, where you have a lot of trees, some of the terms just funny, but trees, tree stumps, limbs, where you beat automatic entanglement of a diver. It's on a tended line. So those add some pieces to that. But again, the biggest thing here is during that planning phase, and then also that diver in the water, understanding that if you become entangled, you're still connected to your air source. That's what we plan for those contingencies, so that someone else is going to be there to help you get untangled. Entanglement doesn't get better by struggling against it. So, but the disorientation is true. It doesn't have to have a lot of debris in physical debris in the water. It can just be almost no visibility, and you might not have contact to the bottom. You might have taken up, you might have some slack in your tended line. it's easy to get disoriented. So again, it's one of those things that we want to train for, and we will be training in limited visibility.
I'll
Yeah.
just
And
throw
so,
in really quick about compass training.
yeah, go
It's
ahead.
like something that we just, I think we learn it generally, like say in advanced classes or whatever, but in very low and zero visibility water, you definitely want your compass because just like being in the middle of the woods, you can get very disoriented very quickly just by making one little turn. And so under the water, that's super important. When we dive in the Oscilla, it's complete like zero visibility. We have two flashlights. All you can see is your hand in front of your face. And so yeah, as soon as you drop to the bottom, you're immediately looking at your compass to know like what directionality is in front of me, where, my people are behind me. And then if you do get confused or whatever, then you have that compass there. So compass training is key.
Yeah, thank you, Jimena. And actually, our next module is on navigation. So that's a really good point. When you have low visibility, yeah, the compass is your lifeline. It's very important to have. So so how do we avoid entanglements? Ideally you can free yourself from an entanglement. How many of you have ever been entangled before? Yeah, I have too, Andrea. And
Yep.
right? Um, so it is disconcerting, and like Chris said, you just go, right, I have an air supply, I can do this and stay cool and calm and do your best to get yourself out of the situation. So I've cut myself out of entanglements, and then I've helped other people who got entangled, often with monofilament in the Gulf of Mexico, especially
Gulf of
especially near
America.
fishing sites. Oh yeah, whatever. It's always the Gulf of Mexico to me. Sorry, Scott. It will forever be the Gulf of Mexico to me. I'm not, yeah, I'm not changing my language there. I'm sorry, but no, not sorry. So, but there are places where there are a lot of people who fish, and there's the risk of getting entangled in monofilament, just as an example. Places like Cherokee, where they have found all kinds of things at Cherokee, even recently, cars, and it was, a site for not just dumping, but some interesting disappearances happen there, and dive teams have found things. But if you've ever dived there, which we will do as part of this class, then you'll learn that there's some areas that have pretty good visibility and then some that don't. And in those low visibility areas, there's a lot of trees and things under the water that you can get entangled with pretty easily. So ideally, you're going to be able to free yourself, but this is where buddies are important. And so you want to make sure that you communicate and help each other and know how to do that. So use proper lines for a systematic search, maintain equipment, reduce line traps and fouling. Obviously, streamline your gear. We always say that. And then know the line signal communications. So when you become entangled, you want to do the same thing we teach our open water students: stop, breathe, think, breathe, and act or react. Stay cool and calm. Attempt to back out of whatever got you entangled, if at all possible. And then if you do have line signals, let the tender know what's going on. So that's a part of that. Eddies and holes. Do we deal with eddies and holes in our area, everyone?
Well, I was just doing the
Yes.
waterway markers inspection in Stinghatcher River today, and I have the fish founder, and it's amazing how to see how the profile was changing all the way throughout. I probably boat I don't know, 3 miles or so, and some places where you go like 25 feet and then right away like 15, 17 feet and then 12 and then 9 and then deep again. So it was all over the place.
Yeah, I saw the
Yeah.
same thing when I was hiking on Saturday along the Swanee River, and there were these areas of, swirling water circles of swirling water, and people were like, "What's causing that?" And it was exactly this. So you don't think about it, because a lot of the places where we go on the river to scuba dive, we don't necessarily see this, like for example on the Wasissa. But many of our rivers here do have these things, and they can present some challenges when it comes to searching. There can also be strainers and debris in the water, trees, and those kind of things. So, what are the possible hazards in this picture?
Ground given away from you,
Yeah,
eroding.
true. Anything else you think?
I'm
Yeah,
not exactly sure what I'm looking at because it's on my phone, but is it a sinkhole? Like what's happening?
It appears to be possibly a river, possibly.
looks like a sudden flooding or
It
Yeah,
could be a flooding.
Yeah.
Who
like
from a
knows?
culvert.
It does look like there's some rapid water, possibly. So
Hmm.
that would be a hazard.
Mhm.
So.
Changes in level. Uh,
Yeah, definitely big changes. So if you were, for example, if you were up here doing a search and there was rapid water pulling you down here, this could be, a potential danger. Like you mentioned, if you look at the earth around here, it does look like something happened here. Something happened and there's some cave in, and so there's potentially more to come. So swift water is another thing. Recreational divers don't belong in swift water. You need to have swift water training. Um, Diving around dams and intake valves also can be hazardous. Intakes need to be shut off before divers enter, and so this is where we would work with local authorities. Turbulence below dams can happen as well. There may be cases of, I mentioned in Cherokee, all the things that have been found there, cars especially, but boats. Um, there could be entanglement and shifting of the object there. So, can you think of how many dams we have in our area? I can think of one right now. Do we have a good amount of dams in our area?
I got a lot of beavers out here, so probably a lot of beaver dam.
There's there's not a lot of dams, but there's one on Lake Seminole, one on Talcon, and then I think there's a little small dam somewhere on Wasissa.
Yeah, so in the case of if it did end up doing a search at a dam, that we would have to be prepared for turbulence to happen below the dams. So I would say the chances are not great that we would end up near a dam, but you never know. So object recovery, once an object is found, you need to mark it, and then planning for recovery depends on the size of the object and water conditions. Always, always, always the number one priority is diver safety. And not just diver safety, the entire team safety, because we have a lot of people who are not going to be in the water. And so when it comes to recovering an object, and again, the object could be a person, it could be anything. There are different ways of dealing with that. It could be you carry it up, you tow it out, you lift it out with bags. You need heavy equipment to lift it out. It could be a number of different ways. So you want to train for all those possibilities. Now, there are many demands on a diver who's doing search and recovery. There are physical demands. It's definitely, challenging to be in some of the conditions that we're talking about, including rapid water. Um, Here's another thing, like those of us who are immunocompromised, this might not be the best thing for us to do, to be in the water, because in potentially contaminated water, you're going to be exposed to infection more. Immunizations are important to prevent getting things that you might be exposed to. You also need to have good nutrition. I'm sorry, I'm like rolling my eyes here because now it's like immunizations are now a political thing, but please know that this PowerPoint has been developed for many, many years, and immunizations shouldn't be a political thing, okay? Practice good nutrition, hydration, take care of yourself, have good finning techniques. There may be a modified frog that you're going to do. You're probably not going to need a modified flutter. But can you think of any cases where you may need any other kind of kick?
Well, you may end up needing a flutter if you are going into like really heavy current, especially like on the top of a surface before, say, a thermocline or something. So like there's a time and a place.
Mm-hmm. Good point. But if you are in a silty environment and you start doing that flutter,
Right.
it's gonna get a heck of a lot worse.
Oh
So.
yeah.
All right. So there are psychological hazards as well. When you have low visibility, this is why we train in low visibility so that it doesn't feel as high stress. So if we do several dives in low vis, what's going to happen in the beginning is it's going to suck, and then you're going to be like, "This is pretty cool." So I actually enjoy low visibility dives, you know. So the stress level goes down, and the air consumption also goes down, which is good. There's gonna, be pressure too. You're gonna feel like, you know, people are counting on you to recover a person, and so there's pressure if you're not successful. There's pressure if you are successful. And then recovery divers need to expect the unexpected and to stay calm. And in a panic situation, it's not okay with diving in this environment. So, claustrophobia is not a good thing. You can't have panic, and you need to be honest with yourself about your capabilities. Now, listen, any of these things can be overcome, and I think you train, you train until you know that you're not going to panic. You got this, but you can't do it before you're ready. There are procedural hazards as well. Using tow lines, divers need to exit the water before the tension is applied to tow the object out. And dragging operations need to stop before divers enter the water, and lifting operations, divers exit the water and stay clear of them. Reduce the risks as well as much as possible. You're going to have backup gear, safety lines, lights, glow sticks, wire cutters, compasses, and plenty of gas, whatever gas it is you're breathing. All right. Risk reduction also includes the gear configuration appropriate for where you're diving. And then where do you secure your octopus or backup air supply? You need to think about these things. Pony bottles, all this kind of thing, line cutters, communication gear, and any other additional gear that you may need to carry on the dives to carry out the operation. All right, we have 10 minutes left. I'm going to briefly get into navigation so that we can be ready for our next session. So navigation is topic 5 for this. And I love it because Jimena mentioned how important navigation, especially compass skills are to search and recovery. And you need to know your location underwater at all times. It's extremely important. And so we're going to talk about surface orientation and underwater orientation and navigation. So before you start diving, you ideally want to figure out, where the search is going to be. And then we already talked about witnesses, and you want to use visual range when possible. So visual range is going to include direct line of sight, or line of sight or inline. So it's a simple way to mark the location of lost objects from the land or surface of the water is going to be with a surface marker. And so you want to have compass headings whenever possible and determine the distance to the location. Again, things like currents are going to impact this as well. So from the water for direct line of sight, you want to hover on the surface over the site, and then have sight in on two objects at a 90-degree angle. Chris, you want to expand on this a little bit?
Yeah. So again, if you're, what we're saying here is, if we talked about this before with the shore markers. So if you generally know how far out in the water you want to start your search, because it's a little bit difficult to, you're out on the water, you're at the water surface, it's difficult to have any type of orientation. So if you have a way to triangulate yourself onto your point that you determine. So say we're working as a team out there, but we have a boat, but you're getting ready to descend. It's far enough out that, we don't have, a line out to you. You can shoot an azimuth from your compass to make sure that you're 90 degrees from two surface objects. There you go. So that, you're descending at the right spot. So you're not descending, you're descending on the start of your search point as you're going down. Or you could be the one that's setting the initial buoy, to establish the search area if that hasn't been done. So again, that's just to help confirm exactly your location in the water, as a diver, to make sure that you're starting in the right spot.
Yeah, so this is a visual depiction of what Chris just said, so that's great. And then from the water, you're going to use the line of sight technique, line up 2 to 3 objects in front of each other and determine the distance to the shore. And here is a depiction of that. You want to speak to this as well?
So with this one, what they're talking about is your kick cycles. So basically, we're saying that we want to, you don't, if you've already established a safe area to enter and exit the water, once you've resurfaced, you want to ensure that, you exit at the exact same point that you entered the water. So if you've already cleared an area, you've already made it safe. You don't want to be 50 feet off from that and realize that there's some other type of hazard that's going to make it more difficult for you to exit. So once you've finished your initial search, if your free swimming search, once you've ascended back to the surface, to ensure that you exit at the same place, you can go ahead and shoot that same azimuth, and then measure those kick cycles. Again, the same way you went out, you're gonna have the same kicks going back in. So we'll get everybody's kick cycles measured to a distance so that we're all on the same page based on your kicks, whether it's frog kicks or flutter kicks, and the type of fins that you have can all affect that. So we'll work on all that.
Great. And for Sean, closed captioning is hearing Chris say one thing, and he's not saying asthma, he's saying asthma. So, so just so you know, he's not talking about asthma. So, all right. Additional techniques include timed swims where you count those kick cycles and count one leg. And then you're going to want to practice all of these things to figure out, your kick cycles and the timing on things. Currents play a huge role when it comes to navigation. We've all had experience, I think, with using our compasses and how currents may impact our kick cycles. Swimming perpendicular to a current will hinder direct progress, of course. And from land, you want to talk about the positioning when you're on site, talk to witnesses, use those visual range techniques, try to get that average of credible firsthand accounts, mark the starting point with a buoy, and then figure out the most appropriate search pattern for what the conditions are. So here's an example of a search area using visual range markings. And you can see witnesses, witness 1, witness 2, witness 3, and the search area. And we actually went over this a little bit before where we talked about the trees and everything. And so here would be a good area to have your search. So navigating underwater, we do talk about this in open water. This part I think is pretty obvious for everyone, but natural navigation really helps. Lines, using a combination of techniques, using your compass as well as having visual references helps. Using surface GPS to help you get there. Using natural navigation like the things that we teach all the time. So if do the lines on the sand run parallel or perpendicular to the shore?
Parallel.
Yes, always parallel to the shore. Any visible reefs, sandbars? We don't have kelp beds here. That's in cold water out, west, but anything that where that may help us with navigation. In a quarry or a lake or in a sink such as Cherokee, you may want to follow the wall out and back or around. Think about the topography and physical features and use point-to-point navigation. Obviously, there are going to be things that impact your ability to see things. And, there may be thermoclines, there may be a lot of other issues. On ocean dives, there may be natural or artificial reefs. Note the direction of the current and the waves as well. All right, so on ocean dives, the surge often runs perpendicular to the shore, and the surge is strongest near any reefs or shorelines. So reduction in surge strength indicates deeper water. We don't really have a lot of surge in our area, so I think we all are pretty experienced with the kinds of challenges that we may encounter here, such as surface current. Always start from the anchor or mooring attachment on the bottom. Use compass headings and times, GPS, and be aware that boats can swing on an anchor. Start the search up current and return down the current. Always start from the anchor mooring attachment on a bottom and just be aware of what's going on. So here's an example of a possible boat movement when anchored. Additional techniques. I'm just going to end with this slide right here. There is a little bit more, and I think all of us are probably getting really tired at this point. So I'm just going to end right here with additional techniques. You can always stop moving and you can watch for the current direction and speed. And also you can watch for any particles or exhaust bubble flow. And then another technique you could do is you could take a handful of sand and drop it and see what happens to it. All right, I'm ending it with additional techniques. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty zapped at this point. And so thank you all for being here. We will see you in 1 week, same time, same link, and we will get through some of the other materials, and we'll have an open book test that we'll take together. Okay? Any
Sounds
questions?
good.
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Chris, did you have
Good
something?
night.
No,
Tonight.
just
Okay.
really excited to keep her going next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Chris, thank you so much for heading up these efforts. Michelle, thank you for being here. Everyone, thank you for your time and your interest in serving together. So I am looking forward to it. All right.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you.
Good night,
Night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay,
Night.
take care. Bye.